Time to start Unit 4, Lesson 2. This is specific to the homework. When we're doing this homework, you'll want to be on page 89. Perhaps you've taken your homework book home or you pulled out the page. And my fingers are crossed that you pulled out the right one. I seem to always take the wrong one. So first and foremost, I'll write my name on that, as you should make sure you do too. And questions 1 through 6 are specifically looking at identifying and naming the prism. To start, I'm actually going to color in the base so I know what kind of shape am I really looking at. Remember that these prisms are named based off of their base. So this one, I already went through and colored it and I numbered its sides. It has 8 sides. 8 is octo, and this becomes an octagonal prism. This next one should be pretty easy. It's a triangle. But when I write that as a prism name, it is triangular prism. I'm adding a suffix to the end of it. For number 3, this should look familiar if you are, well versed in government buildings. This one has 5 sides, as I've labeled, and it is like a pentagon. So when it's a prism, it's a pentagonal prism. Number 4, when I color in and I number the sides, it has 6 sides. So that is a hexagon. But in order to write this as a prism name, I have to write it with a suffix of hexagonal prism. Kind of interesting. For number 5, I noticed that the base is a square. Remember, square has the same length on all sides for the base. So it is a square prism. And for this one, it's kind of like a perfect ice cube. Like every single side has the same length. So we're looking at a cube as an identifier. Number 7, will this net, over to the right, form an octagonal, which is 8, prism? So I have to decide. My first things first, I'm going to look at the bases and count the sides. That would be an identifier immediately. Well, that one has 8 sides, and so does this one. Now I have to look at the faces. I'll count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7... No 8. What the what? There's no 8. So this net would not be able to form an octagonal prism. There's a face missing. It still had the same sides, number of sides for the base, but it missing a face, so like one of the rectangles, it will not make a complete net, and that's what we're looking for. Number 8, the base of a square prism has an area of 16 inches squared. The height of the prism is 6 inches. What is the surface area of the square prism? And if you know me so far, you know I like to draw these things out. I do suggest getting your ideas down on paper because sometimes in our heads we can kind of mess up some math. So I draw a square prism. Remember that this is a square. So when it said that it had on its base an area of 16 inches squared, because it is a square, I know there has to be a number I'd multiply together to get 16. So even though I know it's 16, the side length would be 4. Remember, a square is the same sides, the measurement for all of them. I'm going to write that over to the right so we do not forget. Also, if you like to draw these out like me, it's good to have like another color. So, that's just a hint for myself. But in my square prism to the left, the purple one, I've shaded in the bases. They equal 16 inches squared, but I know the measurement for the length would have to be 4 inches because 4 times 4 is 16, and it is a square prism. This also told me that the height of it is 6 inches. That's the other side of my rectangle. So 6 times 4 to find the area of the rectangle is 24. This is a square prism, so it has 4 of those rectangles as 4 sides or faces. So I would take my 24 and I would multiply it by, you guessed it, 4. When I multiply that out, I get an answer of 96. So that is just the area for the faces, but not the bases. We have to look back and remember that this has 2 bases. 1 equals 16 inches squared for an area. But again, we have 2, so I have to be able to say, okay, what's 16 plus 16, or 16 times 2, and get 32. I add that to my 96, and I get a total surface area of 128 inches squared. Wow, can you believe that? I know it seems like a lot to have to do that, but truly you are finding the area of each part of that net and adding it together. Number 9, the perimeter of the base of a rectangular octagonal, so 8 sides, prism is 8 feet. What is the width of a rectangular side of the prism? I could look at my net above and kind of, gauge from there. I could draw my own, and I'm already thinking to myself, okay, perimeter, that goes around kind of like a fence. So if I have an octagonal prism, it has 8 sides, it has a perimeter of 8 feet, well, by golly, each side should be 1 foot. Those rectangles that make the net, they have to be the exact same length as those sides, so they fit perfectly. And 8 divided by 8 equals 1, so it's 1 foot per side. Number 10, the base of a triangular prism has an area of 6 centimeters squared. The height of the prism is 5 centimeters. The width of the rectangular faces are 3 centimeters, 4 centimeters, and 5 centimeters. What is the surface area of the triangular prism? Whoa, this one I definitely pulled out a sheet of paper to help me with, because this will be kind of a lot. I'm going to draw my triangular prism. I know it's a triangle, which does help me in the long run, but it's also helping me visualize this math. So remember that when we have these nets, they have 2 bases. It doesn't matter if it's a triangle, a pentagonal prism, a triangular prism, a square, hexagonal. They have 2 bases. So when this says that my triangle, it has a base area of 6 centimeters, if I put those together, I'm really going to have 12. So keep that in mind. To find the surface area of this, I have a math formula that I'm going to look at. So it's base times height, and that will be added to side 1, side 2, and side 3. So I would have to add those 3 numbers together. So S1 plus S2 plus S3, and that gets multiplied by the height. I know this is terrifying to look at, but we're going to walk through this together. So let's identify some things. We have a base that has an area we've already figured out of 6 centimeters squared. If we remember back to chapter 2 or unit 2, I keep saying chapter, but if we remember back to that, one triangle, when I find the area, I have to cut it in half. If I have 2 of the same triangle, in order to find that, I would just do base times height. My 3 side lengths, or in this case they say the width, is 3, 4, and 5 centimeters. So, and I have a height of 5 centimeters. And the height is that capital H. Do not forget about that. So when I write this out, and I'm going to be plugging in these numbers. So do not worry. The base times the height of this prism, I already have the base area. And I know that if I have one triangle and I put another one with it, it becomes a square or a rectangle. That is like saying 6 multiplied by 2. I already have the area done. Now, if I didn't have the area done, I would have to put my base and my height in there. But in this case, I already have it done, and I would multiply it by 2 because I know a triangle, you half the area. So I have 6 times 2. And then I will be adding together my the sides that I was given by the problem. So side 1, I just went in order, 3 plus 4 plus 5. And I would multiply that by the height, which is 5. Again, this is all information that is given to me by the problem and that I'm able to decode with. When I get this written out, I can start doing some math. So 6 times 2 is 12, and I will be adding 3 plus 4 is 7, plus 5 is 12, and that'll be 12 multiplied by 5. The 12 is when I add all of my sides together and I multiply by the height. So it's 12 plus 12 times 5 is 60. 12 plus 60 equals 72. So my final answer for this would be 72 centimeters squared. I know it's a lot, but let's work together to do this right.